Our lesson for Sunday, May 17th, is entitled, Faithfulness Requires Courage. The key verse is from Ruth 1:16, which says, "But Ruth replied, 'Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God.'" The scripture is from Ruth 1:3-18, and the lesson focus is we have a clear choice, God or gods. In the overview, it says that the actual events of the book of Ruth occurred during the period of the Judges. The record of the events was evidently written several years later. Thus, we do not have a precise date of when or by whom the book was written. Yet this history within history was divinely given and preserved for us. It is extremely important. Its timeless truth was valid then, and it still is. It contains the only extended genealogical record of David's family found in the Old Testament. The introduction says that choices have consequences, good or bad, which result in approval or disapproval. These facts are revealed in this study and the next. The fascinating story of Ruth is more than an intriguing love story. It is an intimate revelation of the deep sorrow the human race may suffer and how God may direct his faithful followers through it all. God's timing and ways are perfect. Let us discover how God may accomplish this for you and me. In part 1 it says that faithfulness to God during adversity requires courage, and the text is from Ruth chapter 1 verses 3-5, which says, "And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them, and the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. A famine gripped the city of Bethlehem. A godly Israelite family, Elimelech and his wife Naomi, along with their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, migrated from Bethlehem to Moab. Moab was inhabited by the descendants of Lot. The Moabites were fierce enemies of Israel, but a temporary peace had been declared between them. The migrants remained there about 10 years. Adversities seemed to multiply for them. First, a famine caused them to leave Bethlehem. Running away from a problem does not guarantee its solution. Problems awaited them in their new surroundings. Elimelech received no rebuke to indicate that it was wrong for him and his family to flee to Moab at this time. Later, Naomi presumed that it was wrong. Early on, Elimelech died, leaving Naomi as a widow with the responsibilities of caring for 2 sons in a foreign land. To lose a husband under any circumstance is a staggering loss. Her deep sorrow and great pain were immeasurable. The courage of this fatherless family was great. It is a testimony of God's grace and assistance to them in such dire circumstances. Parents arranged weddings for their children in that culture. Finding a wife for each of her sons became Naomi's responsibility. Her choices seemed to be limited to the women of Moab. Marriages between these 2 races were condemned, and access for Moabites to worship with the Israelites was greatly restricted. Mahlon married Ruth, and Chilion married Orpah. Naomi commended her daughters-in-law for being good wives for her sons. However, greater adversity awaited this family. Within 10 years after their arrival in Moab, both Mahlon and Chilion had died. Now Naomi had only 2 widowed daughters-in-law left in her family. She drew strength from God, and courage prevailed. God is compassionate and understanding. He has promised to go with us through the deep valley of death and sorrow. as he was with Naomi, he will be with us. In part 2, it says that faithfulness to God in a pagan land requires courage, and the text is from Ruth 1, verses 6 through 10, which says, Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her. And they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. The Moabites were pagans who worshipped many gods. Chemosh was their chief god. Among other things, human sacrifices were required in worshiping him. This was paganism at its worst. There is not the slightest indication that any member of the family of Elimelech ceased worshiping God. They courageously worshipped and served God in the midst of a people steeped in idol worship. Their witness was strong and effective, and undoubtedly contributed to the desire later expressed by both Orpah and Ruth of their desire to go with Naomi back to Bethlehem. The relationship between this family and God was more than an outward form. They loved and served the true God. They knew that he revealed himself to Moses as the ever-present one. He is the God who meets our needs today. He is with us now and will be with us in the future. Elimelech's family doubtlessly drew heavily from the lessons related to them of God's intervention during the Israelites' journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. No other peoples have been able to walk through a large body of water on dry ground. No other peoples have been miraculously fed and tenderly cared for as Israel. No other peoples have been supplied a river of gushing water flowing out of a rock. Blessed people indeed. God was called the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They had a wealth of history from which they could draw. A refrain of their song of history could have been, Great is thy faithfulness. The ever-present God was with them, even though at times they may have wondered where he was. This required courage, which God supplied. In part 3, it says that faithfulness to God in lifetime choices requires courage, and the text is from Ruth 1:11 through 18, which says, And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have an husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would ye tarry for them till they were grown? Would ye stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people, and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left, speaking unto her. Naomi chose to return to Bethlehem. That required courage. No doubt the very dangerous trip weighed on her mind. Would the people accept her after a 10-year sojourn in Moab? What was her hope and assurance of financial security at this point in her life? She did not allow these or any other doubts or fears to deter her. She had courageously made up her mind to go regardless of the outcome. This posed an emotional dilemma for her and her daughters-in-law. They wept and pled with Naomi to allow them to go with her to Bethlehem. The argument Naomi used to convince them not to go with her seemed to be logical and fair. It convinced Orpah, who returned to her people and her gods. Orpah's courage failed her. She went back to the gods who were unable to help her. She was so close to making the right decision, but tragically, she made her choice and had to live with it. This is one of the saddest events recorded in the Bible. Ruth courageously chose to go with Naomi. Her recorded decision is among the most beautiful literature in the world. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." Ruth made a total commitment to go with Naomi. She chose to be a part of Naomi's family and to live in her country. Her love and loyalty to Naomi and the impact this had on her life undoubtedly influenced her to accept Jehovah as her God. She made her choice, and God's word reveals the benefits she received. Naomi and Ruth trudged their way a minimum of 50 miles over a dangerous road. They were homeward bound. Their choices had the seal of eternity upon them. They had chosen God instead of gods, and the world has not been the same since. In today's life application, it says, the conjunction "and" is the connecting link in the story of Ruth. There are only 85 verses in this story. The word "and" is used 54 times in the King James Version to begin those verses. The "ands" of their lives and ours are of utmost value. There was the "and" of difficult circumstances, a famine in Bethlehem. There was the "and" of death and grief over the loss of a husband and 2 sons. A greater time of sorrow cannot be imagined. There was the "and" of marriage of 2 sons. Mahlon married Ruth, and Chilion married Orpah. The sons died without leaving heirs. This posed a great concern in that culture. There was the "and" of Naomi's choice to return home. The place one lives is important. History would have been shortchanged had she not made the choice she did. There was the "and" of the choice of Orpah and Ruth. Both history and destiny were involved. Orpah's choice was foolish. Ruth's choice was wise. Similar experiences have been, or may be, faced by each of us. How well prepared are we to cope with similar experiences? Choose God, not gods. This is your privilege. If you have not chosen God, do so now. If you have chosen God, reaffirm it now. Each of these choices will make a difference in our lives. May God give us the courage to do so.